So we're going to speak tonight about there's looking at the Selichos for tomorrow, Shiva, Asar, Be-Tamuz, and looks like there's three Selichos. And sometimes you go through a Selichos and you really feel like it's not, you can't really understand it. But I actually thought that at least two of them were really understandable. We're gonna go through the last one, which is called Asar, which is the last one. If you want to open up and consider, or I'll read it. Doesn't matter. And we'll go through that one together, and hopefully tomorrow morning when we say it will be a little bit more meaningful. So again, just to review, we say this every single year, but what Shiva, Asar, Be-Tamuz, why are we fasting? Why are we fasting tomorrow? So it's the beginning of the period of this time, 3 weeks for us, but there are essentially five tragedies that happen on this day, Shiva, Asar, Be-Tamuz. Number one is that Moshe broke the Luchos, and he broke the Luchos because of their sin of the Chet Egel. We saw last week, maybe in Rashi, Fukas, that he was explaining that really the ashes of the paraduma are coming to give a kapara to the sin of the Chet Egel. So you think that Moshe broke the Luchos, but it's really the sin that remains with us forever. Represents this idea that of Bnei Yisrael rebelling or abandoning against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the first tragedy, that Moshe broke the Luchos. Number two is that the Kohanim ran out of sheep for their daily Talmud during the Korban Talmud during the first Beis Hamikdash, and basically it marked the end of Korbanos. And then number three is that both in the first and the second Beis Hamikdash, the day that the Romans breached the city, started to destroy the city. Number four is that a Torah scroll was burned. I think the Gemara says they don't really know so many more details besides for that. I think people say that the Roman officer Apostomus, he burned the Torah. And then number five is that an idol was placed, a Avodah was placed in the Beis Hamikdash. And those are the five reasons that we're fasting. And the first Selicha, which we're not doing right now, but the first Selicha really explains, what exactly, it goes through the details of these five things and explains these are the five tragedies that happen. But the third one, I'm supposed to focus on the third one as opposed to the first one. Two reasons. Number one, I found more material on it. And number two, I think it's a little bit more poetic. It's like it speaks a little bit more to your neshama when you're saying it. So if we actually understand, the big problem I think that people have with Selichos is he's saying all these long piyutim, these poems. Basically, you don't understand what you're saying, but they're poems, and poetry is meant to be a beautiful thing. It's supposed to be meant to inspire you. That only works if you actually understand the words. If you don't understand the words, then it's going to be, indeed, it will be more of a burden to you than an inspiration. But once you understand the words, then you're going to be able to be inspired from the poems, which are the Selichos. So now we'll get to it. We'll go through the words, and we'll learn this. We'll learn this poem, this piyut together. Asar. So it says Asar Asher Nimtzar B'Yad Bavel V'Gam Seir, which means turn to the captive nation that was delivered. Asher Nimtzar, that was delivered B'Yad Bavel V'Gam Seir, into the hands of Bavel and Seir. So the first word of this piyut is she'eh, which means turn. It's interesting that in times that Kadosh Baruch Hu is far from us. He says, "Vanochi aser panai," I will turn my face, talking about the opposite direction. But the request here is she'eh, which is the opposite, is to turn towards us, and bring and come close to us. Asar means the captive nation, which is us, right? We are the captive nation. The Asar, we are the one who's been captive. Asher Nimtzar, we were taken captives beyond Bavel V'Gam Seir. So Bavel, we know, is the Babylonians. They destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash. V'Gam Seir. So what is Seir? So Seir both because of context and I mean, just using context, you can understand that this refers to Seir is refers to Rome, and Seir is in the Torah is Edom, which is Rome. Basically, that we're mentioning that we were taken captive not once but twice. First base and Mikdash, and second base and Mikdash. Then we say Lecha Yehemeh Zakama V'Yitchanein Kiven Seir. For you, it yearns for so long now and supplicates like a young child. Right? So that's still talking about the captive nation, saying that this captive nation, which is us, we yearn for you. Who's you? It's God. We yearn for you, and we V'Yitchanein Kiven Seir. We're calling out to you like a child, like a baby. This is the expression of crying out, pleading, gasping, basically saying we're a child crying out to you, God. We're calling out to you like a baby crying for you. Yom Gavar Hayev year. On the day when the enemy was victorious and the city was split open, and this is that's the phrase that's repeated over again and again in this poem. That in many of the Selichos you'll find a sentence which just we keep repeating it over and over again for poetic purposes. So it's worth pausing here and understanding what it means that we're saying that everything that happened was on this day, Shiva or Be-Tamuz, which is in fact tomorrow, which is gonna be the day we're fasting and the day that we actually say it. And on this day was the day that the enemy won over us, but Tibaka year, and the city was split open. So but Tibaka year is actually a phrase which we find which we see in Malachim and Yirmiyahu. And when that phrase is said, the context of that is that there was this famine, right? When the Babylonians conquered us, there was this great they conquered us, and there was a famine. The nation had no bread, and then the walls of the city, then the walls of the city were smashed through. And so that's basically what we're mentioning here, that we're putting that using that those exact words like here to saying that the city was smashed through, but it was everything else that went on as well, which is the fact that they were making a siege around us, and kind of starving us to death. That was the way the Babylonians operated. They had this wait and see policy, and they kind of allowed the people inside the city to kill each other and starve for bread. And so that's what they did to the Bnei Israel, to the Jews living in Israel. They let them starve and kind of weaken themselves. And then when they took over by Tibakir, finally when it was split open, it was easy for them to conquer. So then we move to the next paragraph. Lizos yikaf vespokaf b'yom chamesh b'droni. For this I am bowed over, vespokaf, and I clap my hands. So the article says that I clap my hands in grief. I don't know what that means. Clap my hands in grief. I think nowadays we usually clap our hands not in grief.
No, what it means is that they used to clap their hands as a way of mourning and bang their hands against themselves. That's like what the pasuk movement says Losis go to do. Like they beat themselves in grief.
Oh, okay, fine. So Vespokaf there. So as a way of mourning,
right.
Biyom Chamesh Pidroni, on the days when these 5 tragedies spread me out. So on the day that these 5 things which we mentioned in the introduction, on the day this happened, then I'm basically in English, what we're saying is I'm mourning today because of the five tragedies that happened. As a consequence of the golden calf, the luchos went away from me. So that's reason number 1. Also, the enemy abolished the tamid, the daily offering, and they took me away in chains. So that's the second reason that the carbon tamid was stopped being brought. V'husham Eliel v'hichal They put an idol in the sanctuary. And through his advice, the enemy, he imprisoned me. And the mincha came to stop, and the enemy burned your law in flames. And so that's also referring to the burning of the Torah. So we see though it's mentioning the tragedies that actually happened on this day, and that's the reason. Going back to the beginning of the paragraph, that's the reason why I'm mourning on this day. And then again, we repeat the phrase. So then we'll go to the third paragraph. Mi'od eschal b'yom shakai dechafani. So this is just a very going to be a very poetic paragraph that he says, I grow exceedingly ill and become distraught on the day that Hashem pushed me away, right? Which is today. Today, Shiva Asar is the day Hashem pushed me away, and I become eschal. I become ill. Me'or chashach v'gam shashach kimo kador stefani. And he says that the light grew dark, and also shashach, which is Babylon, it's according to our scroll, like a ball wrapped around my head. You think that the light grew dark. You know, that's a visual image of what happened on that day. That the serpent, which is Nebuchadnezzar, from the north, swept me away like a rushing current. And the Tzayad, who was the hunter, that was Esau, that's Edom, that's Rome. Shalach Yad, he sent his hand against me. That was also in Rashi and Chukas about when the treaty that they made. We say that the Edom conquers with their hand. They had Safir Vasar and against me and sent his hand against me, as the goat. So our source says that the goat there refers to Greece. Okay, but these really different enemies that will either destroy the base of Mikdash or persecuted us. That's that paragraph. And then finally, the last paragraph to focus a teeny bit more on is that you say, Holy be miskabi halad apecha yashan. Say, O glory of my heart and my fortress. We're talking to God. We're saying, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hal ad apecha yashan, will your wrath forever burn? Are you going to be angry at us forever? This is what it's going to be for the rest of our life? That you're angry at us, okay, but is it going to last forever? Halo tireh am nila asher hishar kmo kishan. Do you not see that this nation is weary, that it has become black like a furnace? Look at our pain. Look at how much we've suffered already. Gidor pirti bevan parti. Repair my breach through the son of Paran. What does that mean? That's talking about Mashiach, right? Help us restore us basically through the Mashiach. Give us the Mashiach. And from among the thorns, pluck the rose Israel. Meaning we're saying that there's these thorns everywhere, which is the persecution and the fact that we're in exile. And from within the thorns, right, there's the roses are guarded by thorns. So get past the thorns and pluck the rose, pluck us out, save us. And then we finish off strong. B'nei Beis Zevul lahashiv Givul haKarmel v'Ashan. Build your house of dwelling and restore the borders of Carmel and Bashan. So how come the base? So that's talking about, right? B'nei Beis Zevul. So what's the Beis Zevul? It's talking about the Beis Hamikdash. How come the Beis Hamikdash is called Beis Zevul? So I want to answer that. Because Zevul is like Zebulun, and Zebulun were on the border of Lebanon, and the wood from the base of Mikdash came from Lebanon. So it's the base of Zevul, it's a house that was built right from Zevul, from the border of Zebulun. And then I heard another idea on this sentence. very Zionist idea that they say that lahashiv gevul. So what does it mean? What does that mean to restore the boundaries? So the idea is that when Bnei Israel conquered Israel, it was a process that took many years. It was only after David conquered all of Israel did they build the base of Mikdash. First they need to have the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael intact, and only when they finished doing that were they able to build the base of Mikdash. It's an interesting point because there's different philosophies about how Mashiach is going to come, and some hold more that the base of Mikdash is kind of going to come down from the heavens, and others say no, that we're going to need to restore the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, and then the base of Mikdash, then Mashiach will come. But the Gemara Megillah, right along with this line that of restoring the boundary, the Gemara Megillah says that in davening first we mention Tikka b'shofar gadol, and then we say Es Tzemach David, which is actually alludes to this idea that first there needs to be a kibbutz galios, that everyone needs to gather and go to Israel, and only after then can we say Es Tzemach David. But only after then does the base of Mikdash get rebuilt. Once we come in and once we come back to Israel, only then is the base of Mikdash built. Also, there's a passage that says Bona Yerushalayim Hashem Nidcha Yerushalayim Yichanis, that there's a passage which seems to be saying the opposite idea, that Hashem is going to build Yerushalayim, which seems to be saying he's going to build a base of Mikdash. Nidcha Yerushalayim Yichanis, and those who are pushed out of Yerushalayim are going to re-enter. So this pasuk seems to be saying, it's the pasuk in Pesukei Zimra that we say that, but this pasuk seems to be saying just the opposite. That first Hashem is going to build a base of Mikdash, and then we're all going to return. But the Gemara in Brachos says that don't read it this way. The Gemara says no, flips it all the way around. Hashem will build Yerushalayim, but only when Am Yisrael return. They turn the pasuk totally around. So that's this idea. Also, that why are we mentioning Carmel and the Bashan? So another idea I heard is that Bashan, that refers to that's where Shevet Menashe was. That's basically the Golan Heights, and that's the path that people traveled back from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, and so that's why we're specifically mentioning to restore the borders of the Bashan and Carmel. That's Haifa or Caesarea, I guess. That's where basically they were sent out of when they were exiled. That's where they were exiled from. Then we say the ayin kaf nekim kaf me'atar midishan. Open your eyes and take revenge from Asar and from Dishan. So who are Asar and Dishan? So if we've been paying attention to this piece so far, you would guess Rome and Babylon, and that's probably correct. But how does Asar and Dishan refer to Rome and Babylon? So these two, if you look in Tanakh, if you look in the Torah, you could actually find these two words, and they're mentioned as names as part of Esav's lineage. That we say Aluf Asar, Aluf Dishan. So okay, that's very nice, but how exactly does it connect? So the idea is that Asar refers to Babylon, and Dishan refers to Rome. So let's start with the easy one first, the hard one second. The easy one is Dishan refers to Rome because the word Deshen, a truma for Deshen, is when there's a truma of the ashes. So Deshen means ashes, and that was how the Romans operated. That they would basically burn everything. Apparently, you can find archaeological evidence that when you want to know when it's from, there's a lot of ashes. That's a good indication that it came from the time period where the Romans were in charge, because they would basically burn everything. Okay, but what about Asar? So as opposed to the Romans, the Babylonians. So basically, before the Babylonians had control of Israel, the Assyrians had control, and the Assyrians had this policy that they would basically create refugees. That's what they kicked out the 10 tribes, and new refugees were brought in place. That's basically how they operated. That's why the 10 tribes were kicked out, and the Samaritans came to take their place. But basically, when the Babylonians took control, they left the local government in place, and their condition was that basically the people in that place, right? They said, okay, we're gonna override on the top, but you guys can keep your local government inside. You just need to provide lodging, you need to provide a home, and you need to provide food for the soldiers. And that's what happened. That the Jews in Israel were under the rule of the Babylonians, but they still had their king for 18 years, but the Babylonians only destroyed the Beis Hamikdash because we revolted against it. They didn't revolt us. They didn't destroy Beis Hamikdash once right away. Only when they revolted did they destroy it, and then only once they revolted again, the Jews in Israel, and they killed Gedaliah, did they actually kick us out. But what's the connection? That Asar is like the word Osher, that they're very similar words. It's just you replace the Shem with the Tzadi. And Osher means like bounty and like plentiful. So the idea is that essentially we were looted, right? They took our food, and they took our homes. So basically we were looted by the Babylonians. That's why they're take revenge on Asar, on the ones who took our wealth. That's the Babylonians, Dishan, and the ones who made all these ashes. That's the Romans. And then finally we say Shifot Ilaim Dad Yishalim Hamaver Hamavir. Bring justice to the mute one, and then pay back to the nation that consumes and sets fire to Israel. So we're asking God to basically, there's a din that if someone doesn't know how to make a claim in court, if he's in Elam, if he's mute, he doesn't know how to make an argument, that we're supposed to make an argument for him. So it's the same thing for us here, that we're not going to be so chutzpahdik to say to God, we have a good reason why you should redeem us. We don't have a good reason why you should redeem us, but we don't even know how to make that argument. Even if we could think of a way to make that argument, we want to make that argument, but we're asking God to be our lawyers, and bring justice for us, make the argument for us, and basically open our mouth like they would do for an Elam in court, and then and pay back to the nations that consumed and set fire to Israel. That's the end of this one. It's really beautiful period, and if you have time, just go through the other ones as well. I think the first one's also very good and very clear. And it's not so many on Shiva Asar Be-Tamuz, as opposed to Tisha B'Av, where you could really go through all of them on Shiva Asar Be-Tamuz and before the fast. Shkoyach.